Feel like your marriage is in a rut? Like your wife is more of a roommate than a soulmate? Today I'm sharing 10 simple yet powerful ways to connect with your wife and reignite your relational spark. By the end of this video, you'll know how to get unstuck and start thriving as a well-bonded team in Christ. Let's go. Hey y'all, I'm Matt, and I provide gospel guidance to encourage and equip pastors and Christian men to thrive in their spiritual, emotional, and relational health. Download my free guide, The 10 Steps to a Thriving Marriage Cheat Sheet. I'll leave the link below. All right, here's the deal. We often give more time and attention to work and kids and obligations than we do to our spouse, and it leaves our marriage relationship on the back burner. But here's the thing. Neglecting to prioritize quality time and really care for our spouse leads to frustration and loneliness and resentment, which causes even more disconnection in the marriage. So in this video, I want to help you communicate with your spouse in a way that fosters a healthy and consistent bond. To bond with one another, you have to confide in one another. Confiding or revealing yourself fully and honestly is the lifeblood of intimacy and marriage. So I'm about to show you and walk you through a very powerful exercise. And when you do this together, I want to encourage you to do this in a few ways. First, I want to encourage you to sit close to each other, facing each other, preferably holding hands. Now, one person goes at a time, moving through all 10 of these connection points, and the other person listens actively and can only ask clarifying questions in order to seek a deeper understanding. And then when that one person goes through, you switch. Okay, here are the 10 connection points. The first easy step to connect with your wife and level up your marriage is to share your celebrations. Celebrating each other enlivens your marriage. Sharing victories, small and large, strengthens your marriage bond. Recently, my wife told me about a new client she has. She was so excited. This client is super interesting and inviting Amanda to do a lot of things that Amanda just loves to do. So she was pretty fired up. And I got to celebrate that with her by asking her to share more details and then affirming her calling and gifting. As an active listener, we respond to celebrations with things like, "That's amazing," or "I'm so excited for you," or "I'm really celebrating that with you." Genuine enthusiasm for the good things happening in the life of our spouse shows them that we see them, enjoy them, and share in their gladness. Celebrating your spouse is an act of generosity and kindness, and couples who do so are 5 times more likely to say that they have a happy marriage. The second easy step to connect with your wife and level up your marriage is to share your struggles. Vulnerability is the key to fostering a deeper, closer bond. Vulnerability breaks down walls, it builds trust, and allows us to be our authentic, true self with one another. Vulnerability happens when we willingly take the risk to reveal our emotions and weaknesses. I like how Mr. Rogers says it. When we can talk about our feelings, they become less overwhelming, less upsetting, and less scary. The people we trust with that important talk can help us know that we are not alone. I know that when I'm struggling, when I feel fractured or dysregulated, my temptation is to be alone. But what is actually good for me is to move toward my wife and share with her so that I'm not alone. Marriage is most intimate when we're vulnerable, when we let down our guard, drop the fig leaves, and trust that our spouse will still love us, even when she knows everything about us. The word intimacy literally means into fear. So there is no intimacy without the risk of vulnerability. Like, this is me. This is who I am. Will you be with me? We cultivate this openness in marriage when we allow the most vulnerable aspect of ourselves to be seen and known, and we honor one another by responding with understanding, empathy, and kindness. As an active listener, when your spouse becomes vulnerable, you might respond, I really feel the weight of your whatever that emotion that you're picking up. Or you might ask them, how would you like me to join you in this struggle? If you don't allow yourself to be vulnerable, your spouse won't understand what you need from them to feel safe and seen, soothed and secure. So dive in and open up. And hey, if you're having a hard time being vulnerable, marriage care could really be helpful to you. Click the link in the description below to find out how I love and serve couples in marriage care. I'd love to accompany you. The third easy step to connect with your wife and level up your marriage is to share your appreciations. We hear so much about what is wrong with us from the world and from our own inner critic. And it's important that we hear what's good about us too, especially from those closest to us. Expressing appreciation builds up and honors our spouse. So when you see something in your spouse that you appreciate, it's super important to say it, to express it. Let me give you an example. My wife is an amazing chef, and she spends so much time preparing dinner almost every single night. And so I want to make sure that I tell her how much I appreciate her effort and the deliciousness her culinary skills provide. Honestly, this is an amazing way that Amanda expresses her love for me and for the kids. And food is one of my love languages, so it works out great. What I'm trying to communicate is the importance of expressing appreciation for all the ways that my spouse is patient and understanding with me, especially when I'm feeling stressed. For all the ways my spouse helps the kids with math homework, because that's not my mojo. And the list goes on. There are ample opportunities every day, every hour for me to express appreciation. And appreciation is like relational gravity. It draws us closer together. What are the things that you appreciate about your spouse? Big things, small things. Take a mental inventory. Keep a running list. Love keeps no record of wrongs, but it does proclaim a record of rights. Love shares those good things we see and appreciate in our spouse to bless them and to build them up. And as an active listener, you might respond, thank you for sharing that. Or that really means a lot to me. Or that really encourages me. Thank you. The fourth easy step to connect with your wife and level up your marriage is to share new information. Connection thrives when we know what's happening in each other's lives. So we want to keep our spouse informed about what's going on. We want to share our perspective on events and plans and decisions. We want to share updates on what we know is happening at work or with the kids or our family and friends. We want to share how we feel internally about things rather than holding our emotions to ourselves. We don't just want to think it on the inside. We want to speak it out and confide. Doing so minimizes surprises. It keeps us from making unilateral commitments, and it also prevents that pressure of feeling obligated at the last minute to do something that we just didn't know about or maybe we didn't remember. New information can be, hey, I've got a client or class and won't be home for dinner tomorrow night. Or, I really need you to pick up the kids on Friday. Can you rearrange your schedule to be available at 4 p.m.? As you actively listen, you might respond, hey, thank you for keeping me in the loop. Or, thank you for sharing this with me sooner rather than later. Super helpful. The fifth easy step to connect with your wife and level up your marriage is to share your curiosity. My wife loves puzzles. She's almost always working on one. She spreads them out all over the table, all the pieces scattered everywhere. And several times a day, she'll just walk by that table and spend just a minute or two rearranging the pieces, moving all the ones that fit closer together, and beginning to build a picture. We all have puzzles we're working out in our heads. We've got puzzles about our spouse, puzzles about our coworkers, puzzles about our parents and family members. We got puzzles about ourselves. But here's the thing. Nobody can see your puzzles. You've got to share your puzzles, and it helps when your spouse becomes curious and asks you about them. It might look something like this. I'm curious, why do you look so down today? Or, what did you think about the gift I gave you? Or, are you still mad about that fight we had last night? Or, do you want to make love tonight? Or, do you think I'm being a good parent? If there are things you don't understand, if there are things that you want and need to know, if you want to move closer and connect more deeply with your wife, get curious. Sherlock Holmes needed Dr. Watson, and Dr. Watson needed Sherlock Holmes. They were a team. This is how we do it in marriage. Discussing puzzles gives insight about what's going on with you, and working them out together helps you connect and bond. As an active listener, you might respond, I really don't know. Thank you for bringing that up. Or, I think the reason is fill in the blank. And sometimes it's just yes or no. The sixth easy step to connect with your wife and level up your marriage is to share your preference with a request for change. Here's how this works. I usually make eggs for breakfast, and a lot of times I get in a hurry to take the kids to school or to get out of the house to meet with a client and decide to clean up that frying pan later, which means I leave it on the stove or the sink, and you know where this is going. It's not good. So one morning, my wife had had enough, and she very gently but directly said, "Hey, Matt, instead of leaving the frying pan by the sink, would you please wash it and just put it away?" Now, that is a preference with a request for change. And my response was, yeah, sure. I can see how that bothers you, and I can clean the frying pan after I use it. Easy. Thank you for sharing your preference. Sharing a preference with a request for change names the specific behavior that bothers you and kindly ask what you would prefer happen instead. It's softly and simply stated. Instead of this, would you please do that? When you try this, start with something small. Don't start off with your biggest issue and try and resolve it with this basic communication strategy. It won't work. And then as an active listener, you might respond, hey, thank you for sharing that preference. I can definitely start doing that. Or if you're thrown for a bit of a loop, share, hey, I can see how this bothers you. Could you give me a day or two to work it out internally? And let's discuss it in more detail, maybe tomorrow or the next day, because I really want to meet you here. The seventh easy step to connect with your wife and level up your marriage is to share your apologies. A healthy marriage needs a steady dose of apologies and forgiveness. Let me give you an example. It rained almost nonstop the last 2 days, and my sweet dog doesn't like to poop in the wet grass. He just doesn't like wet paws. So when it rains, he poops in the driveway. And I neglected to pick it up, and my wife had a client come over who had to walk by it. And to be clear, it wasn't just one poop. It was multiple poops. And so my wife was pretty embarrassed, and she gently brought it up, and I apologized and then went and cleaned it up. Our unloving words, our neglectful actions, the things that we do, the things that we don't do, really creates an emotional barrier between us and our spouse. And that barrier only comes down when we name the offense, when we admit it and apologize for it, when we do something about it and receive the forgiveness from the other. One of the most powerful and unifying verbal exchanges in marriage is simply this: I'm sorry and I forgive you. Check out this video, The 7 Steps of a Good Apology, how Christian men say I'm sorry and mean it. I also have an entire online course called The Forgiveness Course, and it's all about following the teaching of Jesus and forgiving one another as you've been forgiven by God in Christ. I'll leave the links in the description below. The 8th easy step to connect with your wife and level up your marriage is to share an invitation to meet a need. Having unmet needs is the reason for most of the disappointments and disputes in marriage. Guys, it will play out according to her unique story and personality, but I guarantee you, your wife has 6 basic needs. Your wife has the need to be seen, chosen, valued, appreciated, secure, and accompanied. The key is to figure out how to love her specifically and intentionally and consistently over time in those 6 ways. And there's a secret to doing this. It's a little known and far too underutilized secret, but it's not complicated or confusing. It's simple. Here it is. Ask her. When you find out what your wife needs and do your very best to meet that need in a way that expresses your love and provision for care for her, man, it transforms everything. It provides a serious bond for your marriage unity. The golden rule of marriage is this: do unto your other half as your other half needs, and do it in the love of Christ. As an active listener, you might respond, when would it be best for me to do so? Or, on it, yes, got it. Or, I had no idea. I'm so glad you brought this up. It might take me some time, but I'm 100% committed to working on it. The 9th easy step to connect with your wife and level up your marriage is to share your hopes and dreams. Our hopes and dreams are vital parts of who we are. If we don't share them with our spouse, we're depriving the most important person in our lives of an important part of ourselves. Husbands should be the biggest fan of their wives. Wives should be the biggest fan of their husbands. Several years ago, I shared my dream of going to survival school. It's been on my bucket list since like the 9th grade. And so my wife very kindly encouraged me to research the various opportunities. And the one I really wanted to attend had a 45-day instructor training course that lined up perfectly with my ministry transition. It was a huge sacrifice for my wife, but my wife listened to me. She heard my heart and she supported my dream. It was an incredible blessing and gift. I am so grateful for her. What are your hopes and dreams? What do you have in big ways and small ways that you're looking to, that you're longing for, that you could share with your spouse? As an active listener, you might respond, yes, I want to do fill in the blank someday too. Or, how can I help you achieve this dream? This is exciting. The 10th and final easy step to connect with your wife and level up your marriage is to share your prayer requests. According to research, praying for your spouse is like pouring super glue all over your marriage. Couples who pray together really do stay together. Data supports it. This is why the enemy wants to keep you too busy to pray together, because praying together leads to more love for your spouse and fills you with a greater capacity to forgive. Praying for your spouse makes you want to spend time with them again and again. Prayer is an intimate way to stay connected, and it's one of the most supportive things you can do for each other. As an active listener, you might respond, hey, I am so grateful for that prayer request. Let's pray right now. Or, I am super committed to pray for you about this every single day until our next Daily Connect exercise. These 10 connection points are the building blocks for a stronger, more intimate marriage. If you'd like some coaching and care to help you implement this practice, set up a free discovery call with me and let's discuss the ministry of marriage care and bring true emotional connection and intimacy to your marriage covenant. I'll leave the link below. One last thought. How would you apply this practice, these 10 steps of real relational connection with your kids or with your friends or with your coworkers, or even as a means of pastoral care in the church? Hey, if this video was helpful to you, it would be so helpful to me if you'd let me know. Give it a like and be sure to subscribe.